Bullseye is back and better than ever, and it has me wondering what the hell Marvel's cooking up for the future of his character in the MCU beyond that of just Daredevil Born Again. Hey everybody, Colton here, and Daredevil Born Again Season 2 Episode 4 was fucking fantastic, and Bullseye's role in the episode was so well done. I am very glad that Wilson Bethel is back. I won't go through my whole usual rant about how stupid it was that Marvel ever considered bringing back this series without staples like Foggy, Karen, and Benjamin Poindexter. You've heard me do that before, but hey, they righted their wrong. Our boy is back, so let's celebrate and talk about what's next. And a little later, I want to discuss the possibility of Bullseye joining either the Dark Avengers, maybe a new Thunderbolts, or maybe even the Sinister Six, as well as the possibility that Bullseye is a mutant. So today's Ask Colton question comes to us from Michael. Michael writes, that episode of Daredevil was just what I'd been waiting for. Do you think Bullseye and Daredevil will bury the hatchet and work together to bring down Fisk, or will Matt be unable to forgive him for killing Foggy? All right, great question. So yeah, in this episode, we get the big return of Bullseye, right? Who was part of the massive overhaul that they did in season 1 of Born Again, where they brought back Foggy, brought back Karen, and they gave Bullseye a big role to play in season 1. Vanessa, like her husband before her, she manipulates the fragile mind of Poindexter and gets him to kill Foggy in exchange for him being released from prison. He agrees, but now he is living in regret and he wants to be a hero.
I'm one of the good guys.
So, as we know from season 3 of the original series, Bullseye, he's not well. He hasn't been well since he was a boy. Kingpin noticed this and used it to his advantage. He recognized that abuse within Bullseye because Kingpin was also abused as a child. So like game recognizes game, I guess. And Kingpin, he used Poindexter's brokenness as a weapon. And Bullseye hates Kingpin for it. And now Bullseye hates Vanessa probably even more than he does Kingpin for doing that same manipulation and having him kill Foggy. Bullseye is living with this grief and he wants to repent and wants to do what he views as making things right by killing Vanessa. Now, Daredevil shows up at the fight to seemingly stop Bullseye from killing Vanessa, but he's too late and ends up saving Bullseye from the AVTF and Fisk. And our questioner asked, can and will Matt forgive him? Well, forgiveness is Matt's thing. It's part of his Catholic faith to forgive, but Bullseye killing Foggy in cold blood, that really did push Matt over that ledge of taking a life. Whereas before he had this strict no-kill rule, a rule that he's come back around to. And funnily enough, speaking of pushing Matt over that ledge, Matt actually pushed Bullseye over a ledge. A fall that should have been fatal, should have killed him, but it didn't. And that's why a little later, I do want to talk about how we may learn that Bullseye is indeed a mutant, and that could explain not only his really good marksmanship, but his ability to survive all these fatal experiences, or should have been fatal experiences, such as Kingpin breaking his back in season 3 and Daredevil throwing him off a roof. So yes, I do think that Matt will be able to bring himself to forgive Bullseye, not forget, but forgive. And I could see Matt being willing to work with Bullseye to like bring down Fisk, but it will have to be like on the condition that they do things Daredevil's way, no killing, and likely with an understanding that Daredevil will send Bullseye back to lockup once the job is done. Now, I've said before that I think this season ends with both Matt and Wilson Fisk winding up in prison together and perhaps having to work together to survive prison because they'll both have a lot of enemies in there. Now, maybe Poindexter is also going to join them in prison. Maybe they all show up together in this prison sequence that we're seeing in Spider-Man Brand New Day, where Spider-Man is fighting the Hand in this cell block. That would be super cool. And really, for season 3 of Born Again, I love the idea of these 3 characters having to try and survive prison together. And it would kind of mirror that 3-way fight that they were in at the end of season 3. So now in Daredevil Born Again season 3, if we see them 3 together having to survive prison, that would make for a really cool season of TV. We also now know that it's looking very likely that on the outside, the Defenders will be back and operating likely in the absence of Daredevil in the event that he is in prison in season 3. So it's all lining up really nicely. But I do want to talk about Bullseye a little more because he really was the standout of this episode, and his scenes, especially that opening diner scene, it just had me grinning ear to ear, man. So we know that the Mutant Saga, right, is on the way. We're currently in the Multiverse Saga, and then we're going to go very likely into what will be called the Mutant Saga. In the MCU, we have seen characters like Miss Marvel, who is not a mutant in the comics. At least she wasn't originally. I can't remember if they've changed that as well in the comics now. But she was initially an Inhuman. But in the MCU, they have decided to make her a mutant.
Kamala, there's something different in your genes. Like a mutation.
And I'm wondering if they'll do the same for Bullseye, because dude, he just can't seem to miss, or die for that matter. And I know that Hawkeye, he can't seem to miss either, but Bullseye, he takes it to another level. And hell, I mean, Hawkeye could be a mutant too. Maybe they'll reveal that Hawkeye is a mutant, and that just in the MCU, the actual like discovery of the mutant gene, it just hasn't been found yet, but that doesn't change the fact that it exists within the universe and within individuals. Now, I've theorized before on the possibility that Spider-Man would be deemed a mutant in the MCU just for simplicity's sake, since Marvel seems to be deeming heroes that aren't originally mutants in the MCU, like they were doing with Miss Marvel, and with us now entering this mutant era of the MCU that will be very X-Men and mutant-centric. Marvel has never really had a shared universe where on the big screen they had to tackle the discrepancy between what it means to be a mutant and just being a person with superpowers. So the simplest thing may be to just have all superpowered people be called mutants. But that does kind of make my comic book fan self shiver a little, because that's just not how it's ever been in the comics. But the more I think about it, the more I think it could be done, and done well. Because, I mean, look, Deadpool, who in the comics, by the way, is not a mutant, his movie in 2016, the Deadpool movie, it introduced us to this concept of activating a dormant mutant gene through stress tests. So, like in the MCU, this idea that the Bengals activated Miss Marvel's mutation, maybe Peter's spider bite unlocked his mutation. And we know that Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, who are mutants in the comics, by the way, their powers in the MCU were activated by contact with the Mind Stone. So maybe that contact with the Mind Stone really just activated their mutant gene. Maybe they all have mutant genes within them that were dormant and didn't just self-activate during puberty. And maybe the age of mutants that we are going to see begin in the next saga, what that could be about is how more and more people are having their dormant mutant genes activate without it being under like some extreme circumstances. And maybe we will learn that Bullseye's trauma from childhood is the extreme circumstance that unlocked his mutation. Hell, Kingpin may even very well be a mutant. Wouldn't that be quite the reveal? Through his extreme trauma in those moments that we saw, the Echo series did a great job at, showing us his history there. Perhaps all his childhood trauma, maybe that released a dormant mutant gene within him, and that's why he has this brute strength that is powered through emotion. And maybe that's how he was able to rip a door off of a car in Hawkeye. Now, Bullseye, he is a great character, and I love this MCU version of him, and I want to see him continue. I hope that they don't do anything like kill him off. But what they cannot do, even though I want to see them continue his character, what they cannot do is have him spend too much time with Daredevil or Karen. That cannot work. He killed Foggy. He cannot be buddies with Daredevil. We can forgive, Matt can forgive, but can't forget what he did to Foggy. And I don't know if we have any Walking Dead fans here, but let me draw a comparison. So there's that show Dead City that's like a sequel to The Walking Dead, and it has Maggie and Negan in it, and they're having to work together. I am all for like Maggie reaching a point where she is no longer trying to kill Negan for what he did to her husband, Glenn, beating his head in with a baseball bat. I am all for her getting past that to the extent that she is no longer on this kill mission against Negan. And we can even see her be grateful that Negan saved her son's life and helped the group like win 2 wars, if I'm remembering correctly. But seeing Maggie and Negan work together in that show and like having to be like somewhat, friendly, I guess you could say, it's weird. And the tension is fun in doses, but only in small doses. So if you were to have like Maggie and Negan just become like straight up friends, that would be weird, because then you start to wonder how she could possibly be chummy with a guy who beat her husband's skull in. And it just makes you feel gross. And it's not in a good way. It's not like a good, like, ooh, feeling when you're watching a show. It's just like, this is weird. It doesn't make sense. It's making me not like the character. So I think the same would be true for Daredevil and Bullseye if they had Daredevil and Bullseye become like, chums. I think that would be weird. They can work together briefly, Daredevil can forgive him and, stand him in small doses. But for Bullseye, I think to truly flourish as a character and perhaps become a more like heroic, like good guy type character for the audience to really attach itself to, I think that needs to be in the absence of Daredevil. He needs to go out on his own and do his own thing, be a part of a show that isn't Daredevil. And I don't think that he needs to be in like a Heroes for Hire thing like they might be doing with the Defenders coming back. Maybe we could see him work with like the Punisher. That could be a fun team up. Maybe we could even see him recruited by Val or Charles for like a Dark Avengers team or a proper Thunderbolts. I did a video over on Screen Crush about that if you want to go check that out. I also recently discussed the possibility of him being part of a Sinister Six team, which could be like a group of anti-heroes / villains that were wronged and used by characters like Fisk or Vanessa or Valentina and Charles. And maybe this group of villains are now like trying to do good or get even, and they find themselves in a position where they're like in the crosshairs of a Spider-Man or a Defenders or something. And that could be cool. A team of villains who were wronged by other villains. So now they are trying to do some good in order to get back at those villains who wronged them. And it shows that, oh, hey, maybe we're actually kind of heroes. That just sounds fun. We've seen it done before with, movies like Suicide Squad, Peacemaker. And I really like the idea of Bullseye maybe being placed on like an X-Force type of team, introduce the MCU Stryker, and that could take us, back to the mutant possibility. The possibilities are just endless. And I love this character, and I hope they do some cool stuff with him in the future and do it on the small screen. He's a TV character. Keep it that way. Do something cool with him. Show us him going on like cool missions with like other anti-hero, vigilante type, or rough around the edges type characters. Do maybe like a Suicide Squad, Peacemaker style show of just ragtag anti-heroes. I think it could be really cool and a lot of fun. And it could be a fun piece of the Mutant Saga as well. If like they're Task Force X or something, maybe even overseen by Valentina or Charles, who were like leveraging super people or mutants for missions and whatnot. And that could all be like tied in with what they're doing with Jean Grey and the mutants' role in Spider-Man Brand New Day and how that all connects to the Department of Damage Control and Daredevil Born Again. And they're brewing something. Something's happening here. All right. Well, those are my thoughts on Bullseye's role in this new episode. This isn't really like, I guess, a review of episode 4. I'll just say 2 thumbs up, really good, loving this season of Born Again. It had a little bit of a slow start with episode 1, but dude, episode 2 and then episode 3 and now episode 4, it is just getting better and better. It feels like we are back, and I really loved Bullseye's role in this episode. So let me know your thoughts on all of this down in the comments below. Thank you so much for sending in that question to AskColtonNow@gmail.com, Michael. All right, I will see you guys soon. Bye.